It was a dark, moonless night as I drove home with my 2 young children in the back seat. They had been bickering nonstop, and I was at my breaking point. I decided to pull over to the side of the road to calm them down and try to defuse the situation. Turning on the car's hazard lights, I stepped out and opened the back door, trying to reason with them. Just as I was talking to my kids, a car pulled up beside us. A middle-aged couple greeted me with friendly smiles. The man leaned out and said, "Hey there, are you okay?" I reassured them that we were fine, but needed to calm the kids down. The woman in the passenger seat nodded sympathetically and added, "We wanted to let you know there has been an accident just over the next hill. Traffic is backed up, and it might help you if you take the side road a little ways back. It'll get you around the Rickon home faster." I thanked them for the advice, and they waved as they drove off. I got back into my car, still mulling over their suggestion. The thought of navigating an unfamiliar side road in the dark unsettled me, so I decided to stick to the main road, even if it meant getting stuck in traffic. As I drove past the detour road, they mentioned something caught my eye. The couple's car was parked there, and they were standing outside, staring into the dense dark woods. Their stillness was eerie, and a chill ran down my spine. I brushed off the unsettling feeling and continued driving. Maybe they had car trouble or simply stopped for a break. When I reached the top of the hill, I was relieved to find no wreck, no traffic jam, just an empty road stretching ahead. The rest of the drive home was uneventful, and my kids had finally quietened down. But that strange encounter with the couple lingered in my mind, gnawing at me. The next morning, I had to drive down the same road again for some errands. As I approached the detour road, my heart raced with a mix of curiosity and dread. I slowed down, and as I neared the spot where the couple had been, I saw a large sign that read, "Dead End." My mind raced with disturbing thoughts. Why had they suggested a road that led to nowhere? Why had they been standing there in the dark? The sight of the dead end sign, coupled with their mysterious behavior, left me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. Years have passed since that night, but the memory still haunts me. Whenever I drive past that detour road, a shiver runs down my spine, and I wonder what would have happened if I followed their advice. I mean, would I have found myself lost in the middle of nowhere or worse? The chilling image of the couple standing by their car, surrounded by darkness, continues to give me nightmares. Even now, late at night, when I'm driving alone, I sometimes think I see their car out of the corner of my eye. Always in the same spot, just past the hill before the dead-end sign. But when I look directly, there is nothing there. It's as if they're still waiting, lurking just beyond sight. I don't know who they were or what their intentions were, but I'm grateful I didn't take their detour. It's a haunting reminder that not everything is as it seems. Trust your instincts, especially on lonely country roads. Sometimes the long way home is the safest path. It was a late Friday night when I finally left the office. The clock on my dashboard showed it was nearly midnight. After a grueling week of long hours, I was utterly exhausted. The usual city road home was always busy, even at this hour, so I decided to take a more rural path. It was longer, but much quieter, and I hoped the serene drive would help me unwind. I turned onto the narrow countryside. The full moon bathed everything in silver, and the stars glittered brightly in the night sky. The road was deserted, and all I could hear was the soothing hum of my car engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It felt peaceful, just me and the open road. But soon, an unsettling feeling crept in. The night seemed to grow darker, and the air became much colder. After a few miles, I saw the old bridge up ahead. I had crossed it before, but always during the day. At night, it looked different, more menacing. The bridge was made of creaky woods and iron, a relic from a time long before I was born. As I approached, I noticed a strange, eerie red fog rolling in. It was thick and seemed to glow faintly, casting a ghostly hue over the bridge. A shiver ran down my spine, and my heart began to race. Something about the fog felt wrong, but I tried to dismiss it as fatigue-induced paranoia, I drove onto the bridge, the wooden planks groaning beneath my car. The fog thickened, obscuring everything beyond a few feet in front of me. My grip on the steering wheel tightened, and I pressed the gas pedal, eager to get across as quickly as possible. The air felt dense and suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Finally, I reached the other side and let out a sigh of relief. I glanced in my rearview mirror, and my blood ran cold. Standing in the middle of the bridge was a figure, a woman in a white dress, her long hair cascading down. She was staring directly at my car. My heart pounded in my chest, and I dared not to stop or turn back. I kept driving, my eyes darting between the road and the mirror. The figure remained, motionless in the red fog, her gaze fixed on me as I sped away. When I got home, I locked all the doors and windows, my heart still racing. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew it was something more. The next morning, I couldn't shake the memory. Over breakfast, I mentioned the incident to my parents. Their faces went pale, and my dad's expression grew serious. Then my dad all of a sudden asked me, "You saw her, didn't you?" I said, "Who?" as my voice was trembling. Then my dad said, "The girl on the bridge. There's an old story about that bridge. A young lady hung herself from it many years ago. They say her spirit still haunts the place." A chill ran down my spine, and then I asked, "What happened to her?" My dad said, "No one knows for sure, but some say she was waiting for a lover who never arrived. Others think she was fleeing from something or someone, but everyone agrees on one thing: she died on that bridge, and her spirit never left." I sat there, my breakfast untouched. The figure in the fog made sense now, but it only deepened the sense of dread. I had seen a ghost, the ghost of a woman who had taken her own life. The rest of the weekend passed in a haze. I couldn't stop thinking about the bridge and the ghostly figure. Sunday night, I barely slept, dreading the drive to work the next morning. For weeks, I avoided the rural road and the bridge, but the memory lingered haunting my dreams. Curiosity eventually got the better of me. One evening, I decided to investigate further. I searched the bridge and discovered old newspaper articles and local legends. The young lady's name was Emily. She had gone to the bridge to meet her lover, who never showed up. Heartbroken, she had hung herself from the iron railings. Reports of her ghost, complete with the red fog and white dress, matched my experience exactly. The story only intensified my unease. I felt a deep sorrow for Emily, trapped in her endless grief. I wondered if there was anything I could do to help her find peace. A month after my initial encounter, I found myself on the rural road again, driven by a mix of dread and resolve. As I neared the bridge, my heartbeat quickened, and that unfamiliar chill settled over me. The red fog was back, thick and glowing. I drove onto the bridge, and there she was, just as before, standing in the middle, her presence palpable. I stopped the car and rolled down the window, whispering, "I'm sorry," unsure if she could hear me. I said, "I hope you find peace." Then for a moment, the figure stood still. Then she began to fade slowly. The red fog lifted, and she vanished completely, leaving only the quiet of the night behind. I drove home with a newfound sense of calm, hoping that somehow Emily had found some measure of peace. I never saw her again, but the memory of that night and the old bridge stayed with me forever. I'd always been captivated by the idea of camping alone in the forest. The thought of escaping the city's chaos and immersing myself in nature thrilled me. So one Friday afternoon, I packed my tent, sleeping bag, and some supplies, and drove to the edge of the dark forest. I parked my car, slung my backpack over my shoulders, and began the hike deep into the woods. The sun was still shining brightly when I reached a small clearing. It seemed like the perfect spot to set up camp. The trees stood tall and dense, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze, and the chirping of birds added a soothing soundtrack to the scene. I pitched my tent, gathered firewood, and started a small campfire as the sun began its descent. As twilight fell, the forest transformed into a shadowy labyrinth. The only sounds were the crackling of my fire and the occasional hoot of an owl. Wrapped in my sleeping bag, I gazed up at the star-filled sky, feeling both exhilarated and alone. Suddenly a rustle in the nearby bushes jolted me upright. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was just an animal, but the noise persisted, growing louder and closer. I strained my eyes into the darkness beyond the flickering firelight, calling out, "Who's there?" My voice trembled in the eerie silence. There was no response. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it towards the bushes, but the beam only revealed swaying leaves and branches. I let out a shaky breath, trying to convince myself it was just a deer or a raccoon. Still, a sense of unease clung to me, like a cold shroud. I added more wood to the fire, hoping it would keep any curious creatures at bay. Every snap of twig or rustle of leaves made my heart race. Hours passed, and I finally began to feel drowsy. Just as I was about to retreat into my tent, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate crunches on the fallen leaves. My blood ran cold. This was no animal. Someone was approaching my camp. "Who's there?" I shouted again, my voice echoing through the silent forest. Still, there was no reply at all. I grabbed a large stick from the ground and stood by the fire, my eyes darting through the darkness. Then I saw him, a tall figure emerging from the shadows. Just beyond the reach of the firelight, he stood still, staring directly at me. Though I couldn't make out his features, I felt his eyes boring into me. Then I said to him, "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't answer. He just continued to watch. Panic surged through me. I had no idea who he was or what he wanted, but I knew I had to get away. I backed slowly towards my tent, my mind racing. And without any warnings, the man started moving towards me, his steps quick and purposeful. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted into the forest, my heart pounding. The darkness enveloped me, disorienting me, but I dared not stop. Branches clawed at my arms and face as I crashed through the underbrush, driven by sheer terror. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps growing louder and closer. I stumbled over a root and crashed to the ground, pain shooting through my ankle. Ignoring the agony, I scrambled to my feet, limping as fast as I could. The faint glow of moonlight through the trees guided me, offering a sliver of hope. Just when I thought I couldn't run any further, I burst into another clearing and saw a small cabin with lights glowing warmly inside. I limped towards the cabin, banging on the door, my voice cracking with desperation. "Help! Please help me!" Tears streamed down my face. The door opened, and an old man stood there, his face itched with concern. I asked, "What is going on?" while my eyes were absolutely wide. "There is someone after me," I cried, glancing over my shoulder. The man stepped aside and rushed inside, collapsing onto the floor. He quickly shut and locked the door, peering out the window. "There is no one there," he said, turning back to me. "Are you sure you saw someone?" I nodded, still trembling. He was chasing me. The old man nodded slowly and handed me a blanket. "You can stay here tonight. We'll sort this out in the morning." I thanked him, my voice barely a whisper as I wrapped myself in the blanket on the couch. The sense of safety was a balm, though exhaustion soon pulled me into a fitful sleep. The old man remained nearby, keeping a vigilant watch on the door. When morning arrived, the old man and I ventured back to my campsite. There was no sign of the stranger, but the terror of that night clung to me. I packed up my things and left the forest, vowing never to camp alone again. The peaceful solitude I had once longed for had turned into a nightmarish ordeal I would never forget.